Hello everyone, this is Jim back with another update, and I know I've been absent for quite a while. It's been I don't know, probably my longest break from updates, and I guess I just needed a break, um, and so I wanted to report in with what's been going on. Um, Last I talked to you all, I was heading to Houston. I attended the Low Carb Houston event, and that was a lot of fun. Saw a lot of good presentations, and connected with many folks. Met some new ones and reacquaintances from the last low carb that I went to out in Breckenridge. I had originally thought I was going to really do an in-depth presentation by presentation recap of that Low Carb Houston event, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to touch on a few points here in a minute, just an overview. I came away from it a little bit down. I'm going to say maybe a little bit depressed, not partly to do with the type of themes that I picked up on in the various presentations, and then partly just because of I think I have a little bit of a seasonal affective disorder. Our weather, it's dark in the morning, it's dark in the evening, and it's cold, and it kind of made me a little bit depressed. Then I got sick after Houston. I came down with a cold for a few days. So anyway, that's sort of what's been going on with me. I had the blues a little bit, and needed a recharge. And everything is good otherwise. I mean, I've made no changes. Not really going to do a diet or exercise update. I mean, I'm still doing the same thing, still eating carnivore, still doing the same kind of exercise. I've made some, not totally the same. I have been doing some tweaks on that, but I'm not going to go into that today. It can be a subject of an upcoming video, but still feeling good, still healthy, maintaining weight and all that good stuff. I guess one thing I have changed some people might laugh at this. I have been, like, for the past month, I downloaded a tracking app called Chronometer, and I have been, believe it or not, inputting the food I eat and weighing my food. It was more just, I was going to do it once out of curiosity, but then that led me to want to do it a little more. And I've been doing it for about a month, and it's been interesting. I've learned a few things. And again, I'm not going to go into detail today. I'll probably make that a subject of a video because it is sort of interesting. I have learned from that experience, and I can share, like, I haven't been using it to guide me what to eat or what kind of macros to have or whatever. I've been using it basically to just document and understand what my regular intuitive eating that I do, what it amounts to, how much I'm eating and what are the macros. I always get asked, what are your macros? And I usually have to tell people, I don't know. I don't track macros. What are your calories? I don't know. Well, actually now I do know, and I'll share that in an upcoming video because, like I said, it's been enlightening. What I thought I'd do today is just a brief recap on the Low Carb Houston. And in this recap, I'm just going to pull out a few slides from a few selected presentations, and the common theme in all of this is kind of what put me in a certain down mood. Is just how screwed up things are, how bad our information is that descends down from the experts and through the medical field and through the corporations and through the advertising and drug companies. I'm just going to make a few examples and not get into too many of the specifics of each presentation, like I said earlier. So I'm going to put up a few. I have some notes here. I'm going to pull up some slides, and the first presentation I'm going to look at a little bit was from IVOR CUMMINS, one of my favorites. And I'm going to start with this slide here, which shows risk factors for heart disease. And there's a few categories. It's a risk factor of hypertension is the first line, high blood pressure. It's got a 1.9 risk ratio, which is statistically, it's considered highly significant. Total cholesterol greater than 200, that's got a risk ratio of 1.5. That's considered borderline significant. You'll see in a minute that these numbers, both of these numbers, 1.9 and 1.5, are relatively tiny compared to some others. LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol, greater than 130, there is no risk. It's non-significant factor, so that's not even considered significant. In a multivariate analysis, okay, which is looking at looking at these variables in a different way. Total cholesterol over LDL, not significant, and none whatsoever. It's not even a risk ratio to be noted. Insulin, on the other hand, which is typically not checked or not even looked at, 6.7 risk ratio, highly significant. Now, this is just to lay the context for the next few slides. If you're looking at where to study or where to analyze the problems, you would be looking at that bottom one there, because it is far, far more significant than the others. Next slide. This was a paper that looked at hyperinsulinemia syndrome, okay, high insulin. This was a study of studies, is a meta-study. This study looked at 423 different papers which looked at diseases. And out of the 423, they selected 63 papers which actually measured insulin. Okay, and what they did is they broke down the data presented in those studies to see, did insulin relate to the various different metabolic diseases. Okay, let's take a look at the result. Okay, 63 studies. The summary is right at the bottom. All chronic diseases. In 60 of 63 of these studies where they measured insulin, an insulin signal was present, meaning there was a correlation between hyperinsulinemia, high insulin, and the disease being studied, all these various diseases. So if you look at the top, cardiovascular disease, 12 of 12 studies, yes, insulin was a signal. Diabetes, 12 of 13 studies. Obesity, sleep apnea, metabolic syndrome, 15 of 15 studies, yes, insulin signal present. High blood pressure, 9 of 10 studies. Non-alcoholic liver disease, 9 of 9 studies. Dyslipidemia, lipid dysregulation, 6 of 6 studies. And certain cancers, 4 of 5 studies. So again, total 60 of 63 studies showing that hyperinsulinemia, or high insulin is just another way to say that, is a signal for all these various diseases. Now, again, just to reiterate, we're not looking at, in general, you go to the doctor, did they say, let's check your insulin? No, they don't. That's really uncommon. They want to look at other things like your cholesterol. They're all fascinated with cholesterol because, well, there's drugs for that. There is no drug for insulin, but it's causal in all of the modern diseases. It seems to be there, lurking in the background. But so it's just unfortunately not the thing we're looking at. Another presentation, I didn't make any graphics to look at, any slides, but I'm going to link to it. And I'll link to every study that I mentioned here today. I'm going to link to, if I can, in the comments below. David Diamond did a presentation which on the diet heart hypothesis. He calls it the myth that cholesterol is a cause of heart disease. That is one I recommend everyone look at because the diet heart hypothesis really is a myth. It doesn't exist. It has been shredded. Nobody believes it. However, like a zombie, it lives on. I mean, the diet heart hypothesis is what came out of the middle of the last century. That's when people determined that, cholesterol from our diet was causing heart disease, so we needed to cut out any saturated fats from animals, and we needed to go towards things like margarine and low-fat diets. This has been an unmitigated disaster, and everyone knows it now, but it lives on, like I said, like a zombie, because doctors are still recommending drugs to fight a cholesterol, high LDL. That scares every doctor into recommending a statin or a low-fat diet. So nobody takes it seriously, though. Outside of, I mean, researchers know that LDL is not causal of anything, and I'll show you. I'll show you one more slide, a couple more slides from IVOR CUMMINS presentation, if I can find them here. Yeah, let's look. Okay, let's look at LDL. Okay, first of all, IVOR talks frequently about the coronary calcium scan of this is a direct measurement of your arteries, and they're looking for calcium accumulation, which shows the degree of heart disease in your arteries directly. It can be looked at and measured. This is looking back, everything you've done, and where are you as of today. And when they do that scan, they break it down into a score. Low score is good, a high score is very bad. And if you look at this slide here, it's broken down to very low, low, intermediate, high, and very high. And then they break it down. They look at, with those in particular scores, what is the percentage of patients who are dead in 12 years. And you can see with a low score, there's a 0.6% of patients dead after 12 years, which is, that's not too bad. I mean, there's always a risk of dying whether you get a 0 score. There's always some risk of dying. But look how it goes up as you go to the top. The very highest score, over 1,000, those folks have like a 1 in 4 chance of dying in the next 12 years. So this is a huge, huge risk factor. It's a huge indicator. But this is a measure. I post this to show you the level of risk factor involved. And then I'm going to compare it with the next slide, which is, this shows at the bottom, you'll see coronary calcium scores, low on the left to high on the right. And remember, we just looked at it, it was 0.6% on the low, and it was 23% on the high. But look at LDL is plotted against this, low to high, the LDL level. This is, it ranges right, let's say low to high, it makes no difference. It's like a little below 1.4, it goes above 1.4, and then it descends back below 1.4. Remember, for the super high, the coronary calcium scan was 23%. Now that would be on this scale, this says 140, that would be 2300 on this scale. So it would be way, way, way off the charts, off of this chart. It would be a huge factor. LDL is nothing. It is not an indicator of anything. So it's a very poor indicator, and we shouldn't be stuffing ourselves with drugs that have horrible, nasty side effects, and have actually shown to be, once you're of a certain age, they're actually destructive and actually cause harm. It turns out our bodies manufacture cholesterol for a reason, and it's our bodies regulate cholesterol for a reason, and they kind of know what they're doing. And man-made interventions to just cut off the formation of cholesterol, it turns out to be not such a good thing after all. And just showing you those risk ratios to show that it's all chasing nonsense. And David Diamond's presentation goes into a lot of detail. I recommend you look at it. He shows how the risk of LDL, it's all been manipulated with statistical tomfoolery, risk versus absolute risk versus relative risk. It's all been manipulated to show some kind of huge benefit to reducing LDL and in favor of statin drugs. If you look at it fairly, it's BS is what it is. So this is one takeaway in terms of the, and I've talked about this before. Everybody knows I'm not a believer that saturated fats are killing. It started to decide to kill us sometime in the middle of the last century, and that our bodies are trying to kill us by manufacturing cholesterol that's going to clog up our heart. It just never made a lot of sense to me. And I'm going to continue to try to drive that point home. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a guy with a pretty good BS detector, and I kind of know BS when I hear it, and there's a lot of BS out there. So moving on, a couple more just brief points from another presentation at Houston. Marianne Damasi did a presentation, and this is now, I'm just going to talk for a little bit on studies. You know, we always hear that the science says this, the science says that, the randomized control studies, blah, blah, blah. You know, well, studies are so, first of all, funding for studies, there's a bias right up front in the funding of the study, and it's carried out by the outcomes are largely determined by who pays for the study, and a lot of it is secret. So Marianne had a couple, I'm going to put up this first slide here. These trials or studies, and I don't know how well this is sort of a sketch, but on the left, these are two icebergs, and one iceberg on the left is sticking up like, you know, about a fifth of it is above the water. And the water line represents what's visible. So what's published about a study is like maybe 1/5 of it, the stuff that they want you to see. What you can't see and what nobody can see and was largely secret is all of the data. Most of the data, the details about the case studies and the reports and all the clinical stuff, that's all buried behind the scenes. You can't see that. So there's no way to question it or really you just know. First of all, they publish studies only when they feel they got a success, and they only let you see part of it. The iceberg on the right now is below the waterline. This is an unpublished study, an unpublished trial. You don't see any of this because it's unpublished. It's all buried. Wouldn't it be interesting to know what went on in all those unpublished studies? Shouldn't we be able to look at that? Do you think there might be some things in there that we could learn from? It might show that a counterpoint, represent a counterpoint to the few studies that are shown. Think about it. All this information is kept secret. For the most part, it's all secret. This was news to me. I mean, I guess I didn't realize that all this information is deep sixed. She also presented a fact which was news to me. I guess in 2004, it was kind of, discovered that a lot of studies, they would do the study, collect the data, and then look at it, and then determine what they wanted to show and say, oh, look at this. This shows a particular outcome we think could be good. And then they'd maybe change the whole scope of the study. In other words, moving the goalpost to present a particular outcome. It might not have been what the study was designed to look for, but if it suited somebody's purpose, say, hey, look at this. Yeah, let's say this is what we were studying. So that all ended in 2004. They actually came up with some regulations requiring people that are going to publish studies to register them in advance of doing them. So they had to state what they were looking for and what the objective was up front and how they were going to perform the study, so that there couldn't be any of this tomfoolery, moving the goalposts and deciding later what they were really looking at. And she presented this slide. Since 2004, look, the studies of statin interventions. Since 2004, since these regulations have went into place, no trials have found a mortality benefit of statins. So all of the benefits that you see in the ads for statins come from before 2004, when there was this kind of shady practice going on. And 2/3 of the studies since 2004 did not find any cardiovascular benefit with statins. Now remember, statins are there to lower your cholesterol and reduce your risk of having a cardiovascular event. 2/3 of them found no benefit with statins since 2004. And what's not stated here, but the 1/3 that do show a benefit, the benefit is very, very minor. I mean, we're talking, it's almost insignificant. It's on the order of like 1.2, 1.3. It's really not even significant whatsoever, especially in view of the documented side effects from statins, which are not to be trivialized at all. So this paints a different picture. Statins are glorified like some life-saving, game-changing drug that's just saving lives left and right. Since 2004, studies do not back that up. There's no strong evidence that cholesterol lowering is a powerful intervention for cardiovascular disease. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I'll throw in 2 quotes from a presentation from Andreas Seinfeld, the diet doctor. Again, this is looking at kind of the whole theme of studies and science. Here's a quote from John Ioannidis. I'm not sure how to say his last name. I'm saying it Ioannidis. This guy, look up his background. This guy is known as the scourge of sloppy science. He was a brilliant mathematician. He's a professor of medicine and health research and policy at Stanford. He is the most cited scientist, period. So this guy's got a reputation of being, he can detect BS, and he can detect BS in studies. In fact, he's written a book, Why Most Published Research Findings Are False. And so he's kind of the watchdog on scientific studies. And in terms of nutritional studies, he's got this quote here that I'm putting up. Nutritional epidemiology is a scandal. It should just go to the waste bin. And largely what we see cited as science that needs to be looked at and considered gospel is nutritional epidemiological studies. These are the low-fat, high-carb studies, low carb, high carb studies. You see these scare studies. The media picks up and runs with it. Oh, low carb may be dangerous, may lower your life. This is all epidemiological studies. And just in general, I'm showing this quote because it is nonsense. These don't prove anything. It's just, it's junk science, to be quite honest with you. And one final quote from another guy from Dr. Einfeld's talk. I never believe any headline that says X foodstuff is associated with Y outcomes in health terms. The science is almost always rubbish. Christopher McCabe, PhD, Executive Director and CEO, Institute for Health Economics. Another perspective on studies involving nutrition. Folks, it's just not there. It's not something easy to study. It's not that there are no good studies and you can never trust it, but believe me, so much BS is paid for by drug companies and food companies, and what gets passed off as scientific, take it with a huge, huge grain of salt. Okay, the final message today, and I really want you to check it out, is a video below that I've linked to from Tom Naughton, and it's called Wisdom of Crowds versus the Vision of the Anointed. And you've got to watch this. It basically says everything I've been trying to say, but in a much more effective and funny way. This was a presentation, this was a keynote address that Tom did at the Weston A. Price Foundation conference. I think it's from this year, it's relatively recent. It's basically, I think the title of it is Diet, Health, and the Wisdom of Crowds. And this is an important concept which I want to emphasize, and I hope everyone looks at things this way. And I'm going to put up this slide. When we talk about wisdom of crowds, he's juxtaposing it with the vision of the anointed, and that's exactly what's going on here. Look at this slide. Wisdom of crowds contrasts with the vision of the anointed on the right. Wisdom of crowds, the knowledge is diffuse. Okay, it's many people having different dispersed. It's a bunch of anecdotes. You know, it's all of us talking to each other. It's many people. The vision of the anointed is concentrated within a few experts, within the elites. Wisdom of crowds is based largely on experience. Okay, our N equals 1. I tell you what I did. I tell everyone on YouTube what I did. I listen to other people on YouTube and other social media, and I talk to people. it's experience. What did you do? What did I do? Okay, that kind of thing. The vision of the anointed, it's based on expertise. It's academic, theoretical. Okay, studies. Wisdom of crowds is unplanned. It just sort of, it evolves. It just happens. It's sort of spontaneous. The vision of the anointed, okay, it's always planned. And sometimes it has to be imposed because the anointed always think they know better. And so for your own good, they need to impose certain things, certain taxes, certain rules on you in order that you follow their wisdom. Wisdom of crowds develops over time. It just evolves a little bit in stages. The vision of the anointed kind of comes in fits and starts because they love new, bold, exciting ideas. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, in the middle of the last century, there's this new, bold idea that saturated fat was causing heart disease and needed to be, it's the thing, it's why, people are dying. So we got to do something about it. This was a new, bold, exciting idea. And so the anointed decided to run with it. And the anointed were people like, the Senate committee, Senator McGovern's committee decided, we got to do something. And they did something, and it's been a total disaster. This dovetails with, I'll just say with the idea of, I don't know if anybody's heard of this, fragile versus anti-fragile. There's a book written by Nassim Taleb, who's a brilliant mathematician, philosopher. The anointed comes up with things that are fragile, and the wisdom of crowds comes up with things that are anti-fragile. Means if one person is wrong, it's not a big deal because you can sustain it. If one person or one idea is wrong from the anointed, it can be a total disaster and everything breaks. Anyway, please, I'm not explaining it very well, but these concepts are fundamental in the way I view things, and Tom NAUGHTON does a fantastic way to present these concepts in a humorous way, I might add. You'll really be laughing. A couple more slides of the vision of the anointed. I mean, this is how it works. The anointed identify a problem in society. And to fix the problem, the anointed propose a grand plan. They always have a grand plan. They're gonna fix things. They know how to do it because they're the anointed. They're the smart ones. They have the science. Typically, it requires spending other people's money, restricting other people's freedom, and often both. This is how the anointed operate. They're going to fix everything for us. What's going on today, though? In this final slide from Tom's speech is on the top. You had the anointed, the regulatory groups, the USDA, the American Heart Association. Then you got certain scientists and other experts. This is the anointed on the top, and at the bottom, this is all of the wisdom of crowds. This is all of us. This is me speaking to you and me listening to you, and all of us sharing our N=1 anecdotes. What works for us, what doesn't work. Because we now have social media and because we're sharing, information used to just flow down from the anointed down to the crowds, but the crowd is now happily speaking back and sending signals back to the anointed. And I love this slide here. Your advice sucks. And that is what I'm trying to say earlier with some of my critiques of various things and statements on various aspects of the cholesterol and statins and so on. So we live in a time where, thankfully, that we don't just have to listen to the anointed. We can also talk back and talk to each other, and that's the whole purpose of this video today and why I made this channel, is to say, hey, I live my life sort of making a lot of bad mistakes. I thought I was following some of the right rules, and then things never did turn around for me until I stopped following the common wisdom, the view of the anointed, and I started questioning everything, and then actually everything turned around for me. And I know it's from talking to people, it's turning around for everybody. So I've said enough. Please check out Tom's video, Diet, Health, and the Wisdom of Crowds, and the other videos that I mentioned below. Again, I apologize for just doing a brief kind of quick overview of the Houston event. I mean, it was good, but there's just not time to provide a lot of details, and so I'm not going to. I will be back with some updates on some other things, like I said earlier, on what I'm doing with diet and so forth. But for today, that's going to do it. Until next time, everyone, hope you're doing well with your journey. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing and commenting. I appreciate it. And let me know if I went too fast on any of this or there's any questions. I'll be happy to answer. Take care. Goodbye.